Hello, everybody, and welcome. Just waiting a few minutes or a minute or two here just to let a few more people join, and then we'll be getting started. While we wait to get started here, wait for a few more people. If you could, just go into the Q&A box. Let me know if you can hear me okay. You can see our screen, everything like that. Just want to make sure everything's working correctly here. I hear you. All right. Sounds good. Cool. You sound great. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. All right.
Nice comments, guys.
Very cool. All right. Well, it looks like we've got a good chunk of people on here. So just to be mindful of everyone's time, we'll go ahead and jump into it. So hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Matthew Shoemaker. I'm the product and partner marketing manager here at Banyan Technology. I'll be one of your co-hosts just to kick the call off, and then I'm going to hand it over to our subject matter experts for the rest of the webinar. So thank you again for joining today's webinar, Multi-Mode Shipping, Responding to Evolving Freight and Parcel Markets. So before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this webinar and we are going to send it out to everybody within 72 hours or so. We'll send that out to the email you use to register for the webinar. So please keep an eye out for that. For a better experience, we just ask that you close out any unnecessary apps or windows. That'll help improve your audio and visual experience on the webinar. As we all know, Outlook or Teams that are refreshing in the background might cause a little bit of lag, cause audio issues. So just close any of those out. It'll help you to have a better experience. And lastly, we love questions. Please do engage with us in the chat box, in the Q&A box. Submit any questions you have. We'll do our best to answer them live on the webinar. If not, we have a time at the end for questions as well. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it over to our very capable hosts. Alan, you there?
Yes, sir, I am. How are you today?
Oh, fantastic.
Great. So you're going to interrupt us right when you get a really solid question from someone and see if you can throw Eric, Tony, and I off our game, right?
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Well, welcome, everybody. I really appreciate you taking time out around the lunch area to join us for our conversation. My name is Alan Minton. I work with Banyan Technology. I'm joined by Tony Verrill and Eric Levine of ProShip and CMS WorldLink, respectively. Tony, you want to tell a little bit about you and ProShip and then pass it to Eric, and then we can get going?
Sure. Thanks, Alan. Yeah, Tony Verrill, Director of Sales here at ProShip. ProShip, multi-carrier shipping software working parcel into LTL, shipment execution for outbound shipments for a variety of enterprise shippers. Obviously, part of our portfolio is the CMS WorldLink product line. And Eric, you want to give a quick intro of CMS and look forward to the conversation today with you, Alan.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Tony. So CMS WorldLink now finds itself in a great position operating under the Fog Software Group portfolio, sitting aside ProShip as a sister company and a few other software providers that perform similar solutions. So like ProShip, we're a multi-carrier shipping solution specifically designed to service manufacturers, retailers, third-party logistic providers, or frankly, anyone else shipping where we can provide some benefit. So hopefully today we'll be able to provide some insight about the industry and teach you a little more about our solutions.
Great. Thank you, Eric and Tony. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Banyan, we are a connectivity platform and a TMS. So we connect not only to Truckload, but to LTL, local carriers, and of course, our relationships with ProShip and CMS WorldLink allows us to bring in Parcel as well. You're going to learn a lot about both of those industries, but keep in mind, this is a partnership right here. So if you're finding something you like in one and like in the other, that really means you get everything together because we all work well together and serve the same client base. Let me go ahead and tell you what we're going to tell you, right? I think that's the first part about if you take a speech class in high school, you're supposed to do that. So here's our agenda. Today, we're going to talk a small bit about the state of the industries. We'll break it up. I'll do some Truckload and LTL. Tony and Eric will talk about Parcel. We'll answer the question, hopefully for you, why multi-mode matters and how you can work it into your operations to really deliver some value, either if you're a shipper directly or if you're a 3PL or an LSP serving other people, we'll do that. We'll give you some highlights about our partnerships and how we work together, and then some places where you, not necessarily where you can meet Tony, Eric, or I, but where you can meet Banyan people and where you can meet ProShip and WorldLink. But my best guess is Tony, Eric, and I'll probably be at those spots together anyway. So we'll put that together. We do have questions. Go ahead and try and interrupt. I tell everyone I have 3 teenage daughters at home. I have not finished a sentence in a decade, so you're probably not going to throw me off my game. Okay, so let's get going. We want to. All right, so here's the first thing. I'm going to give you a caveat about what I'm going to go over. To me, the truckload in the LTL industry is much like the economy at large. All those old rules we used to watch when it comes to the economy, they're not necessarily applying right now. Whether you talk to people go, are we in a recession? Are we not? Depending upon which metric. Kind of like that in truckload and LTL. So I've pulled some commentary or some comments from some really reliable sources. I want to highlight on it. So we're getting ready to come up to that time where everybody ships everything, right? I'm hearing across the board, we're not going to see something, as what did Ann say, super peaky. I mean, we're not really going to see a huge increase, but we are going to see an increase, not as much. I know that sounds a little contradictory to what we saw on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but we're not really, we don't anticipate seeing a huge volume increase. I think something else in the trucking industry is that we keep hearing a lot about driver shortages. Much of that is to do with the fact that the average age of the driver is getting older. Those folks are retiring and we're not replacing at the same rate. A little bit later, I'm going to talk about the location of some distribution centers, and there's a couple reasons why they are where they are, but one of those is to better serve and entice drivers that could maybe, let's say, live in Pittsburgh and they can do a run to Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, and back in the same day and get home. They're trying to solve that driver shortage problem there. Spot rates, they're probably going to bottom out in the first half of this year and start rising up. So we saw a lot of rates super high on the truckload. We were looking at pre-pandemic $1,800, $1,900 a truckload, and then we were starting to go above 3,000. Now they're dropping back down. A lot of that is fuel prices, supply chain shortages, and so forth. So we're going to see them really drop back down. But what it's going to do is going to take a lot of those carriers and independents. And you guys, if you don't know, you'd be surprised at how many mom and pops and carriers and independents really are the backbone of this. We know the huge, large companies, and they do a great job. But there's a lot of folks with 10 trucks or less that are moving an enormous amount of freight in this country. So we got to be a little concerned about dropping some of those out, okay? I mentioned the mass proliferation of distribution centers. So I live east of Columbus, Ohio, right there in the middle of the country. And when I come into Columbus, I drive on this road, Highway 16, and it's hard to go 2 to 3 miles on a very nice road without seeing new distribution centers everywhere. It's going to tie into our multi-mode concept, but people aren't going from New York straight through to LA, right? They're stopping and dropping off and mapping things out. And this is where Parcel pops in and local carrier pops in. How can we finish it out? I know east of Columbus, Intel's building this massive new plant, and I get that, but that does not account for all the distribution centers that are popping up in that area. And then I think the other part is there's some new modes coming out, right? We talk about, I've got a full truck. I got less than a truck. Tony and Eric can talk about, I don't even need a pallet. I got a bunch of packages. Should they go parcel? We talk about local carrier. And I noticed we've got in here Flock Freight. This is just a good example. Flock Freight or Uber Freight or some of those are fascinating to me. Flock Freight is shared truckload. That's kind of a new model, and it's very interesting. Technology is allowing us to figure out different ways to get your thing to where it needs to be faster and cheaper. So there's a high level of truckload, LTL. There's a lot of stuff cooking in the parcel space. So Tony, Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're hearing?
Yeah, thanks for that overview. Yeah, I think the collaboration from shipper to shipper, from the freight side, or just even technology from the carrier networks to the shipper, is definitely one of the biggest things that we've seen of truckload LTL coming into the parcel space, right? If I aggregate my parcels, if I can aggregate with like shippers in my distribution center business park, what savings can we share? You see the story of AirTerra and American Eagle Outfitters and their supply chain kind of digitalization process, right? I think from a parcel industry update perspective, I think it's really three chunks that we would summarize for, let's say, an outlook going into 2023. Definitely not going to focus on I don't want to say not focus on, but we're not going to harp on the lessons learned of the pandemics. We're focused on more of a 2023 outlook in this summary here. I think we've had enough webinars about how the pandemic has changed our lives, right? So I think the first three bullet points on this slide are really grouped together, right? Carrier capacity, the pendulum is swinging, right? Last couple of years, obviously tight capacity, ballooning of e-commerce or direct to consumer or parcel volumes through networks, obviously increased rates, decreased customers' ability to go negotiate better rates or even secure capacity with their carrier partners, even if they had been using that said carrier partner for the last 15, 20 years for their parcel volume, right? I think 2023 is with capacity coming back into carrier networks is really going to be the general sense in the industry from a parcel perspective is going to be the year of the shippers, the coin term. But this is a great time to run a carrier RFP, get back in touch with your carrier partners as far as new services they offer, better rate positions from a negotiation standpoint, and refocusing that conversation around negotiation of carrier rates back to probably more of the 2017, 2018, 2019 carrier negotiation conversations from a base rate. Obviously, surcharges have entered the fold, but we are, I guess, less concerned about capacity nowadays. It's better from a shipper's negotiation perspective. So with that capacity swing, I think more capacity into the overall parcel network nationally really as new carriers that enter the market have matured. So whether it be same day, next day provider, there are more options for customers instead of that ground or that 2-day shipment with a national provider. I think the middle mile capabilities have matured, and that is on the backs of planes and trucks and less, a single carrier within your carrier mix being able to help you move from New York to LA, now stopping in Columbus with your example, Alan. So I think that zone skipping, that middle mile as a service really was a capability they have built out over the last 2 years and is going to be an additional service that customers can tap into for 2023 and beyond as you look at your service mix as well too. So this gives you, again, more carriers to negotiate with, more carriers to get into your RFP, to go back to see what have they done from a collaboration perspective, new service perspective, a shared model perspective, if you will, from a truckload. The final theme obviously is going to be, uncertainty, right? So contract disputes, labor disputes, pick a use case, rail, FedEx, UPS, of the like. Obviously the economic uncertainty will focus on, from a parcel perspective, I think what I would chalk it up to is really a plateau of the e-com volume that we've seen, pandemic-induced e-com volume, right? We are back to more, brick and mortar sales. We are back to, less reliance, but it has shifted the way that we purchase, way that we consume, our goods from companies and brands, right? So, in this new normal, of course, e-com volume, was accelerated the last couple of years. Maybe we're not seeing as large of a balloon as we had previously, but I think some of that is what we're calling maybe closer to the customer. So less time in a carrier network. If you aren't going to use a middle mile strategy, this could be leveraging a third-party logistics provider to have a secondary, third warehouse, maybe a finer assortment of goods. or for some retailers enabling ship from store, which again lets you tap into more same day, next day providers at a lower cost as well too. So those would be the main three themes that we call out from a parcel perspective. Essentially, more competition is a good thing, and there are more capabilities out there for parcel shippers to tap into with applications like CMS, ProShip, and obviously Banyan technologies as well too.
Yeah, I like the idea about the new carriers to the industry have matured. That goes over, by the way, into the LTL and truckload and local carriers. And I think that's really, that benefits shippers and 3PLs tremendously. You have more to choose from. There's more competition. That's a good point. We're going to talk about why go multimode. I'm really going to call on Eric here because I know he has an interesting perspective on it. I know that some of the reasons we all know, right? Why would you go multimode? And there's still good ones. Let's reduce cost. No one wants to pay for stuff they don't need to. And let's do stuff faster and better. But there's a lot of nuance to that. Eric's got a good handle on it. Eric, I'm going to move to a slide here. You gave us some really good, interesting points here. Can you speak to these for us, please?
Yeah, of course, Alan. Thanks for the transition. So we talked about the state of the LTL industry, touched on the state of the parcel industry, but the majority of this webinar is to discuss the importance of going multi-mode. So first, we want to inform you on why you should and the necessity of it. So the first part we want to bring up is we've been talking a lot about the shifting landscape. So you need to remain agile to it. A good quote we have from Southwest Airlines is that shift happens. What they mean by this is there are so many various factors throughout the shipping industry that can overnight turn your shipping operation upside down. Unfortunately, we're at the mercy of carriers, and carriers are at the mercy of their drivers. So a perfect example to bring up for this is the UPS strike of 1997. At that point, if you were shipping solely utilizing UPS, your shipping operation went into a chaotic state. You had to immediately pivot to utilizing another carrier. You were not able to get packages from A to B. You were not able to renegotiate with other carriers because you were in such a time crunch to get your shipments out that you had to take whatever spot rates were available in the market at that time. Another thing is that consumer environments expectations are always changing. At one point in time, you could get a consumer a package in 10 days to 2 weeks. Now that leaves that same consumer with an unsatisfactory experience. You need to be able to pivot it in having a multimodal solution to decrease that time in transit. So the other part of it is, although we don't want to harp on the pandemic, it did happen, and it did open our eyes to a lot of things that can happen in the industry. So you need to have the ability where the pandemic happened, you cannot ship a package this way. You have multiple modes or other carriers that you can utilize to ship that package and save cost and time. So ultimately, you want to use multimodal shipping to decrease dependency on individual carriers and improve the efficiency and decrease cost and time in transit for that process to get the package to your customer. So the second part we're going to touch on is you have to undo those pandemic compromises you made. So throughout the pandemic, there was limited capacity for carriers because of the massive increase in e-commerce. We saw that consumers were not really going to the store anymore. They were staying home, and those shipments that were going to store to be picked up in store or to be sold in store were now shipping directly from DC to consumer or store to consumer. So you may have had to compromise with carriers in the past to get their business and even obtain a rate because essentially you didn't have another option. You were at the mercy of that carrier giving you capacity and charging you whatever you want. You had to secure capacity and unfortunately pay that pandemic premium price. Now there's been a complete shift where those same carriers forecasted the same demand for e-commerce to happen in the next few years. However, we saw the pandemic ended, some other factors in the world change. So now consumers are going back to the store. So now because of the same forecasting done when they had limited capacity, we now see the opposite. There is a ton of excess capacity. So now you have an opportunity to renegotiate with your carriers, obtain better rates, because it's now a shipper's market and the power is kind of in your hands. So the next thing we want to touch on is you need to overcome the fear of losing discounts from FedEx and UPS. A massive concern when you move to a multimodal or multi-carrier solution is that you are not going to be able to obtain those negotiated rates you had because you may not be able to meet those volume metrics. Now, it's funny when you talk to every company has the best rate, or at least that's what the rep is telling them.
Yeah.
So in these conversations, you need to now understand the shipper's market you in, find your leverage points, refocus that same conversation, and understand now you can come into the conversation on the offensive and find the best deal for your company because they need your business instead of the contrary in the past. And on that same note, some serious ROI analysis needs to be done internally when you're looking for a multi-carrier solution to determine if those negotiated rates you obtained will provide a better cost-saving opportunity than if you're able to rate shop between the different carriers.
I want to stop there real quick, just on, overcome that fear of losing discounts, right? This is more so just on a primary carrier basis. FedEx, UPS example in here from a parcel perspective. Certainly, Alan would, like to hear your opinion as far as like the truckload, primary carrier for truckload. Obviously, you mentioned kind of the mom and pop moving quite a bit of freight with their 10 truck fleets. I think this is a common concern, right? There is reliability concerns. There is, I have negotiated discounts over the last 10 years, 20 years, it may be. I am comfortable working with this vendor that need to be rethought, right? And I think that's where reaching out to and going out to the market, whether it's CMS, ProShip, anybody else under the sun that offers services similar, getting their opinions on how to mitigate that risk ultimately for the business, right? I think it can be, it can be said, you can easily go off, get the same service level somewhere else. But I think doing your due diligence and I guess overcoming the fear of losing that discount, letting the technology, do its best, remove the human intervention is really what we preach. But it is tough when the rubber meets the road to make that shift completely from the comfort level you're at right now. I guess, Alan, in the truckload LTL space, I don't know, probably just as prevalent as the parcel space, right?
I'm going to say it's a little less because I think there's more options. I'm going to suggest local carriers now kind of getting into a little bit of the parcel is probably going to ease that pressure, right? I mean, we look right now, I've worked in the multi-carrier shipping space and it's competitive and it's tough. But you've got UPS, FedEx, USPS, and DHL. I got connections to 294 LTL carriers. So there's a lot of more shopping. I think what we're going to do is when Eric, you're going to get to the single source of truth and visibility. And when we talk about that, and when someone like CMS Worldlink can sit here and say, let me match your visibility into rates and performance. When we start doing that, I think it's freeing up more. And I like to see how Parcel's getting to maybe where the LTL and the truckload markets might have been. A little more competition, a little more visibility. And yeah, I think there's a real neat opportunity. I love this phrase, undue pandemic compromises. That's beautiful. That's exactly where we need to be right now.
Yeah, thanks for elaborating on those points. Tony, I wanted to touch more about what you said about, having those relationships with your carriers, and essentially what that can lead to is some carrier dependency. And when you become dependent on those carriers, we want you to break the mold on the carrier technology promise.
Yes.
So something that happens all the time is that, say you're utilizing a FedEx, a national carrier, you're talking to your rep, they might try to convert you to using their own in-house solution. You might want to do it because it can be viewed as seamless. It's free, it's easy to integrate, and it wouldn't affect production because you're kind of doing the same thing that you were before, now just with a software solution to empower it. However, what you don't realize as you do that is you're hamstringing yourself because you now do not have the ability to be multi-mode and have to still use that swivel chair approach. So you're not only hamstringing yourself on the multimodal system, but you're also missing out on efficiency options other solutions provide. This is going to tie you to a single carrier, and it's going to ultimately limit your ability to maneuver and pivot to multi-carrier and multimodal. And lastly, talking about what Alan just touched on, it's so important to have a single source of truth and visibility. So a multi-carrier system will allow you to be able to view basically the entire market, especially if you have a partnership with Banyan, where you can view the 294 potential LTL rates based on location, of course, at that exact time of shipment. So be able to understand performance, add-ons, surcharges, and other costs better when you can view it all under one roof. So within these multimodal or multi-carrier solutions, they have in-house reporting and business intelligence tools where you can identify and see these aspects of your operation. So they're going to provide in-depth analysis into carrier usage, shipment efficiency, any other metric that you want to track to ensure your workflow is operating correctly, efficiently, and that there aren't some other other modes you can implement that would help make your workflow and operation more effective. So ultimately, we want me to move away from that swivel chair and other manual approaches and allow our software to present you the most efficient and effective way to transport your package from A to B.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on this. I know we're running tight on time, and I appreciate a couple people pointing that out. But I do think you've got a good point. And it's a transition from the last slide to this. It does start with that business intelligence. I mean, I can talk a little bit about understanding and comparing rates to performance and mixing it all together. But there's a couple key things, Eric, you might want to talk about. What is it that you need to have in place if you really want to put multi-mode in your operations?
So the first thing is you need to have the technology to implement it. But assuming that the company looking for a multi-carrier solution has a ERP system, OMS or WMS, they'll be able to implement one of our solutions with them. But on top of that, it does start with data and business intelligence. You need to look in-house, and it all starts with internal conversations to determine whether there's a true ROI in implementing the solution. You need to look at what modes you're currently using, your top carriers, what your current volume is. This is going to give you a high-level overview of how you're shipping, who you're shipping with, and how much you're shipping. Then you need to take a more detailed look to look at specific parts of your workflow. Can you consolidate parcel to LTL or LTL to truckload? This will help you decipher whether multimodal shipping is really for you, if you can actually implement that as part of your workflow. Then you need to identify specific parts of your workflow where you can apply efficiency. Can you implement load consolidation strategies like milk runs? Are you going to go out and pick up from each of your suppliers to decrease time instead of allowing them to bring trucks and drop off at your DC or your store? Then the one thing we really want to push is the importance of rating and comparing modes on a per shipment basis. So you may think that this is going to be too time consuming to consider the efficient way of shipping each individual package, but we can't stress the importance of it. When you're shipping hundreds, thousands, or hundreds of thousands of shipments per day, having pennies or fractions of a penny saving on each package, once it's compounded over time, really impacts that bottom line. And lastly,
I think I'm going to interrupt real quickly on that because I think you got a good point. In Banyan, through partnerships with CMS WorldLink and ProShip, you can actually ship those two, rate those two together live in real time because of our API connections that we both have, and say, hey, what's the best strategy? Is this an LTL or is this a parcel? And you can make that determination based on some rules. I know a lot of people think that's not possible, but if you're working with us you can do that live today, right now.
and trying to do all these things manually and not utilizing our software, you're not getting the most out of your business. You need one source or technology to manage it all. That's exactly why our companies are partnered together. In this space, it's extremely difficult to specialize in each aspect of shipping. The good term is jack of all trades, master of none. So working with a partner who has partners allows each company to focus on what they're great at and allow the others to do the other aspects.
Yeah,
You had a point you were going to make?
Yeah, we had a question from the audience actually, right, for this exact discussion point, right? So the question is, does the program allow small parcel and LTL to live rate, comparison side by side? For example, shipping 2-piece package, does it give me rates based off 6 boxes if I send ground versus 1 pallet if you send LTL?
Yep, you
And
can
it's
do
the
that.
use case of these combined solutions working together. I think the other component of a multi-piece, let's call it a 6-box, FedEx UPS ground shipment versus a light LTL, would certainly give you the rate comparison, time in transit comparison, so level of service comparison, but also tightly integrated into your workflow. That is no
Right.
longer a manual process that takes an analyst 30 minutes. That's done in less than a second with these tools combined. So when you start talking about planning for how am I even going to pick and pack and ship, I think we would be remiss if we don't talk about the workflow efficiency gains of these solutions, right? The typical stat that we've used from a ProShip CMS perspective is integrating these workflows, multi-mode, these decisions for the software to make of comparing modes, and comparing rates in one platform, not with multiple different systems, is about a 30% reduction in your workflow. Back to capacity within your DC, within your shipping environment, doing more with less, back to what Alan had mentioned, what we're all after, right? So doing more with less, or at least what you have today. I think it's a big increase in capacity for your labor or facilities today bringing these together as well. So Alan, Eric, I don't know if you have anything to comment on off of the question.
I think the 30% is a great thing. You can do exactly what you just asked in that question today. So you can call Eric up and get CMS WorldLink. You can call Tony, get ProShip, and they'll leverage us on the back end or vice versa. That's live rated there. We're a little slower than sub-second on LTL
Sure.
carriers, but that's due to their APIs, man. It ain't up to me. But we're probably 2 to 3 seconds. So it's not that long and it's clearly defined. So I really like that opportunity. I think the other thing you want to keep in mind, if you've got a 30% reduction in your operational, you know, if you can save 30% there, I can tell you just a base figure that we use for ours is you can also probably save 12% minimum on your costs associated with it. So if we were to look at you, Tony walks in, Eric one of us walks in and said, I can reduce 30% of your effort and I can save you 12% on your cost. Kind of a no-brainer, right? And I think that the last point that Eric was talking about, working with a partner that has partners, he's right. We could, well, if we had enough time and money, we could have mimicked the CMS WorldLink or the ProShip network center. But why would we do that? We have great partners there. We integrate really well. And I think that's the key. Partners that has partners. Eric, you were dead on with that one. Let's, mindful of our time, right? We do have sort of a graphical representation of what we do, our pallets, our warehouses, everything. This is how we work together. We find out what you need to ship. You come to us, we figure out the best mode, and we get it to where it needs to be as fast as possible and as low a cost. You can call Eric up and get it. You can call Andrew Larson on my team up and get it. It's a partnership, but this is how we work together, and it's really benefited a lot of people. Hopefully, it'll be something that's interesting to you guys. I know we're getting out and telling our where are we here? Oh, how to get in touch with people. If you haven't seen Eric's face, we have another picture of him here, right? We keep putting him up there. This is pretty simple on how you get to it. Eric's very easy to work with. I've worked with him and been lucky to do that on a couple different deals directly. Really good on that. Andrew Larson works with me. He's out of Minnesota, so he's on that central time zone. You just talk to either one of these guys and they'll get it all wrapped up for you. They'll ask you a lot of questions. We're going to do our due diligence first. It's a little less of a sales and more of a sort of an operational overflow to figure out how we'd work. But if you've got some time, you got 30 minutes, they'll tell you whether we can do something or shake hands, part friends, one or the other. But reach out to Eric. He's a super sharp guy, and Andrew's a real good guy too. Any comments on how we want to do this, guys? Is this good enough to say how we want to get there?
Yeah, this works great. I've worked with Andrew as well. Alan's a pleasure to work with, as you can see from being on this webinar. But whether you reach out to Banyan first, get connected to us, reach out to us to get connected to Banyan, it's all the same.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect. And Tony, we call him anyway. Even if you don't call him, we're going to hook up with him anyway. So he's always involved in the mix on this. We're going to be out and telling our tale to a lot of people, but here's a really interesting comment. Tony, you want to talk about Converge? Because this is your guys' show, but it's awesome. It's a very good thing.
Yeah, as Alan mentioned, obviously, going into 2023, back in, in-person conferences, I think the first couple will be, touch bases in January, in April, Manifest, ProMat in Chicago, to name a few. But the larger organization, Fog Software, the holding company for WorldLink and ProShip and other entities, has our really, I'll call it our biannual customer event that is called Converge. So if you are a ProShip end user, WorldLink CMS end user, we are bringing all of our companies together under the Fog portfolio for an end user conference. Obviously, partners like Banyan will be there to provide expertise, Q&A, and really have a lot of product training, in addition to extensions, right? Training on what else you can do with your application. So want to at least make sure that's noted here, mainly for the conference in Nashville come the end of April. Obviously, you'll see more market material being shared both from partners at Banyan and directly from ProShip and CMS WorldLink as we move forward. But certainly plan to see you guys out there, trade show floors, cocktail hours. Any questions, obviously we can follow up after this session. certainly, look forward to engaging in person here at some of the other engagements throughout the year.
Yeah, look us up because I talked with Deanna, who's our director of marketing here. She's probably in the room back there with Matthew, but I got some cash for a dinner. So Tony and I might be able to buy you a sandwich and a cocktail or something like that, or Eric and I and Andrew and those stuff. So hit us up for that if you're at any of these events. I really would, if you're not a part of the ProShip or the CMS WorldLink community, their ecosystem, they have a great product. They deliver great value. But this also is a really good reason to be part of that. Converge is an excellent opportunity to get together, and you got to be a member of their team. So do it. We'll be there. We'll say hi to you there. But this is a worthwhile endeavor to come and visit. I think I feel like I'm really going to be a jackass saying we're already over our time on our questions and stuff. Maybe Matthew, if you pop back in, can we answer questions and respond it back to them via email at the end of this so we don't keep people too long, or how do you want to do that, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been responding to them as we've been going along. We had
Good.
Just one more. Are we sending out contact info? We can get that out to everybody as well. So yeah, we can follow up afterwards with email for sure.
All right. Any closing remarks, Eric or Tony?
We hope to see you in Nashville.
Yeah. It's a good time to be in Nashville. Great city. Nice time of the year.
Great city here. Hopefully the sessions start after 9 a.m. Local time. But, no, I appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully we run into each other here, for the attendees of the webinar, and really appreciate everyone's time to join us today.
Hey, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Eric, Tony, it's been a pleasure working with you on this. Matthew, you have been great in guiding this through us. We'll get back to you those questions we didn't answer. We'll get it off to you. Give us a ring if you need something from us. Thank you for taking time out of your day. Have a good holiday season, guys.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Sarah.
Thanks for your time.